We're live. This is James Robert Deal and the James Robert Deal for a Washington Governor radio show. This is our first broadcast, so it might be a little rough. I've got my sound guy on the line here, and my wife saying my coffee is ready. But let's just pretend that we're starting over with one of my favorite songs played by yours truly. Here we go. This is James Robert Deal, and we're going to talk about Washington politics. I'm running for governor against Jay Inslee and a lot of other candidates. So what I want to talk about tonight is campaign finance reform and getting the money out of politics. And we hear a lot of people say we need to get the money out of politics. And then people say we need to reverse the latest Supreme Court decision. Well, I don't think that's enough. And I don't think that campaign disclosure is enough. I think that campaign finance, public disclosure, and election reform all should be addressed together because they overlap. And I think that we need to fix all of them. The result would be much better. So we do have a public disclosure commission. However, it only requires candidates to reveal who's contributing and how much. Now, those who contribute to the campaign to some extent control the positions that the candidate takes. Now, it might be that the candidate will modify his positions in order to please the contributor, because to run a successful campaign, you need a lot of money. Mr. Inslee has over $1 million in his campaign account. I assume he's planning to spend a lot of that on TV advertising in the last few weeks. Or it's possible that it works the other way around, that the candidate has certain positions and that he's able to get a contributor to contribute because he holds to those positions. Probably it's a little bit of both. When you need to raise millions of dollars, you've got to be serious about raising millions of dollars. So there are groups that work together to raise campaign money. So first of all, should there be a lower lid on the amount a person can donate? Right now, for the Washington governorship, the maximum allowed is $2,000, and I think that's probably $2,000 for the primary and $2,000 for the general election. That may not be objectionable. It might need to be lowered, but I will leave that issue for further debate. But one I do feel strongly about is that we should make it illegal for corporations to donate. Now, maybe we're in conflict with the latest constitutional ruling. However, it seems to me that the that case is probably going to be overruled. And what we could say is that as far as Washington law is concerned, corporations should not be able to donate. Corporations should be prohibited from paying bonuses to employees with the understanding that they're going to donate to the candidate, and that it's going to be illegal and that it should be illegal for corporations to say anything to their opponents about how they should vote. It should be illegal for a corporation to discriminate against an employee on any level at which they work because they support the wrong candidate or because they refuse to go along with the candidate that the corporation likes. It should be illegal for lobbyists to participate in fundraising for a candidate. It should be illegal for a lobbyist to say, we like you and I can raise campaign money for you and we want you to take this position. A lobbyist should not be able to offer any campaign contributions or imply to a candidate that campaign contributions are available. A lobbyist should not be allowed to work for a fundraising effort. So we have lobbyists down there who represent the biggest businesses in the state, the biggest businesses in the country, and we don't know exactly what they're offering. Now, of course, citizen lobbyists are a different thing, and it would be important to make a differentiation between citizen lobbyists and professional lobbyists. But again, I would think that a citizen lobbyist should not go with a list of people to call who will donate or with an offer of funds. So we need to get the money out of politics, and that's what everybody says, but we're trying to further refine that concept. So I'm putting these limitations on corporations because corporations are not people, and I'm going to discuss that in a later broadcast. Corporations do not have the same rights that human persons have. Corporations are artificial persons. They're constructs for a business purpose. They don't have the right to vote, we know that. But they should not have the right to put pressure on their employees to vote a certain way or reimburse employees for donating to a certain candidate. So limitations on how much can be contributed, limitations on who can contribute. We do public disclosure through the Public Disclosure Commission here in Washington. You can go to pdc.wa.gov and look up any politician and see who they've gotten their big contributions from. But again, I think that's not good enough. I am strongly in favor of publicly financing campaigns. It should be unnecessary for candidates to spend enormous amounts of sums, enormous amounts of money on television ads, radio ads, billboards. I don't know what to say about yard signs. If you're running a statewide race, imagine how much money is being spent on yard signs. I don't know if it'd be proper to prohibit yard signs, but it seems like a lot of money, a lot of material that gets wasted if not properly recycled. So if politicians are not going to advertise on television, radio, buying big ads in newspapers like Mr. Bryant did, Mr. Bryant bought 2 full-page ads in the Seattle Times, and one of them was about the environment, and he implied that he likes hiking and he likes fishing, and therefore he's a friend of the environment. I think that the fact that he's buying full-page ads tells me he's a friend of big money. Here's how I would suggest that we conduct our election for governor in order to bring new blood into the process and to make it unnecessary to raise a lot of money and therefore reduce the likelihood that candidates are influenced by big money. What I would suggest is that, for example, by February 1st, the potential candidates would submit signatures, and any person who can obtain 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 signatures should be put on the first ballot. So I'm proposing that we have more than just a primary and a final election. I'm proposing that we first of all have a petition. That would be the first step, and then 60 days later we would have an initial primary. So let's say that 40 potential candidates are serious enough to raise 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 signatures. So 60 days later they go on the first primary ballot. We're going to have a first primary, then the second primary, which is the one we already have. So we're adding 2 additional steps on front. We're adding the petition, then the first primary, then the second primary, then the final election. So in the first primary, we whittle this 40 or 50 candidates down to 5 or 7 or 4, some lower number. Then we have our August election. The election this year is on August 2nd. And at that time, we whittle it down to the top 2 because we're a top 2 state. This might require a constitutional amendment. But I'm not afraid of constitutional amendments. I think we ought to have a lot of constitutional amendments. So, during this 60-day period between February 1st and April 1st or May 1st, that's a 3-month period, May 1st. How do the candidates get the word out? Well, they're able to receive contributions, but perhaps not as big as currently allowed. What the state will provide for them is a voter pamphlet distributed to every household in the state, and every candidate would have the opportunity to present his position. We would pay for this with our tax money. Then there would be, of course, a lot of time on TVW, which is Comcast Channel 23, and the fact that Channel 23 programs are available would be advertised in other media, newspaper, in the voter pamphlet, in radio, so that people would know to go to it. Now, I have a 5-minute speech on TVW. If you go to jamesrobertdeal.org/radio, you will see a link to that. But I don't know how many people even know that there's a 5-minute broadcast by each of the candidates on TVW. We'll see if it's in the voter pamphlet. Another scandalous aspect to all of this is that although the state is publishing a voter pamphlet for the final election, the state is not publishing a voter pamphlet for the primary. Some counties are publishing a voter pamphlet for the primary, but not all of them. And some of them have different formats. Some of the counties just take the format that I submitted for the state voter pamphlet and then duplicate that and use that. Pierce County wants me to do an entirely different voter pamphlet presentation, and the amount of words allowed are just really too few to say much of anything. And it asks arbitrary questions and does not give me the opportunity really to spell out all of my campaign positions. So the state should also pay for forums, televised forums that will be heard not only on TVW, but also on public television and even commercial television. Late at night, broadcast time is exceedingly cheap. So we have our first primary, May 1st, and we whittle it down to maybe 5 or 7 people. Then we have our primary in August 1st, and we whittle it down to 2, and we have our election in November. And each month during this period, we have a voter pamphlet. We advertise on radio, telling people you can go to TVW in order to hear what the candidates have to say. That would make maximum use of TVW instead of paying so much to private broadcasting companies. Now, the objection, of course, is that why should the state have to pay out all this money? My contention is that it would cost the state a lot less if we had public financing of corporations, because the way we have it now, the elections are paid for by special interests who may not be working in the interests of you, the voter. The special interests might be working in the interest of Monsanto or the coal trains or the oil trains. I have reprimanded Mr. Inslee for what he did in 2014. We had a chance to require by law that genetically modified foods be labeled as such, and Jay Inslee took no position. If you go to jamesrobertdeal.org and do a search for Inslee, you can read the letter that I wrote to him. On Friday, Mr. Inslee and I and one other candidate were interviewed by The Stranger, and I brought this up. And the Stranger interviewers asked him to respond, and he did not respond. I guess he has no explanation for why he would take no position on labeling GMOs. That means he's not against GMOs. And that means he would probably oppose my proposal that Washington become an organic state, or that we ban Roundup, now known to be a human carcinogen. Or the oil trains. Mr. Inslee is working diligently to craft rules that will make oil trains safer. Well, what he needs to know is that you cannot make oil trains safer. Bakken crude contains a lot of naphtha. Naphtha catches fire at a very low temperature, and it has a high vapor pressure, means that it off-gases very fast. So it's very easy for any spark to set it on fire. These oil trains cannot be made safe. So he mentioned The Commerce Clause. And I'm a lawyer. I've studied the Commerce Clause. I've taught the Commerce Clause to my law student. And there are many interpretations of the Commerce Clause and exactly how much power the states delegated to the federal government when we established the Constitution and said that the federal government could regulate interstate commerce. And there are cases that say the states retain certain powers over interstate commerce. And one of those would be when the cargo is exceedingly dangerous. We know what happened in Quebec. An oil train blew up and destroyed a city and killed 47 people. I think that the oil trains will stop running. The question is, do they stop running before or after Seattle blows up, or Everett blows up, or Spokane? All the trains funnel through Spokane. I would think that even though I'm running as a Democrat, the Republicans over in Spokane should be quite interested in the fact that I'm going to stand up to these oil trains and say, no. If you want to run an oil train through this state, you got to remove the naphtha so it's not so explosive. And then, would it still be safe? I'll reserve that question. I haven't researched it. So, who is the person working for? Who is the candidate working for when he takes money from big contributors, from aggregators? You know, there are people who specialize in gathering different like-minded groups. Let's say maybe it's the coal trains. Well, Mr. Inslee is working hard to make coal trains safer. Actually, I don't know what he's doing on coal trains at all. But coal trains are inherently unenvironmental. And by that I mean between Wyoming and Washington, a distance of 1,100 miles, every coal train car loses 2,000 pounds of coal dust. And this coal dust is laden with mercury. So let's just be conservative and say that out of this 2,000 pounds of dust, half of it falls in the latter part of the trip, and so we'd have 1 pound of coal dust per car per mile. And we have a 100-car train, so that's 100 pounds of this dust per mile. And let's say we have 10 trains a day, that's 1,000 pounds of this dust per mile. And this mercury-laden coal dust, some of it runs off and runs into the streams and into the rivers where it contaminates our fisheries. We talk about restoring our fisheries, and we're allowing coal trains to run through the state of Washington. These are totally contradictory concepts. My first job as governor is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Washington. And I don't think Governor Inslee is doing that. I don't think he's even aware of these issues. So the money determines who wins, for the most part. We need to take the money out of politics by publicly financing politics so that people without money can run. They're going to get in the voter pamphlet. The voter pamphlet's going to advertise that they can hear more about them on TVW. We can have debates on TVW that people will know about. We'll have each person in major newspapers, let's say once a week, can publish 500 words. That should be enough to get your message across. And the state should set up websites so that candidates can present their message, so that they can publish and receive feedback from potential voters, and so that they can do fundraising. And they should receive help and assist in setting up a PayPal account if they don't know how to do that. Of course, people can have their own websites if they want, but the state can make this available. All this reduces the cost of running an election so that you don't need to spend $100,000 on campaign literature, on billboards, and millions of dollars on TV advertising. If we do this, then it empowers voters. It brings in new possible candidates, people who are more qualified than, let's say, the person who was King County Executive or Attorney General. That's the usual route of advancement through Washington in order to get to the governorship. Well, what that does is it delivers candidates who are professional politicians. Now, Jay Inslee, I agree with many of the things he has done, and he's not all bad. So let's get that straight. However, he is of a different wing of the Democratic Party than what I am. He's of the Wall Street wing of the party. He's of the pharmaceutical wing of the party, the wing of the party that believes you got to raise a lot of money and has gotten into bed with the pharmaceutical industry. And I just tweeted a tweet tonight about how the National Democratic platform favors health care for everybody but opposes Medicare for all, single payer, which is what Bernie Sanders wants. What does that tell you? It tells you that the Democrats believe they need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, $1 billion even, in order to win the election. And the pharmaceutical companies serve as aggregators, and they find the contributors who've got $2,000 times 2 and can donate to the campaign, whether it's state or whether it's federal. Money has corrupted the system. Money has made corporations too powerful, too influential. People have sort of given up. They think that Jay Inslee is the best they can get. Most Democrats are not of the Wall Street wing of the party. Most Democrats are of the green, progressive, environmental, New Deal, Democratic wing of the party. And that's where I am. I'm in the Bernie wing. I think I'm stronger environmentally on positions even than Bernie takes. I don't know what Bernie's position is on mandatory vaccination or on fluoridating our drinking water. Two huge industrial scams. I do know how the mechanism works when it comes to fluoridation. Chemical companies donate a lot of money to candidates for the national legislature. And then they pressure senators and representatives to appoint their friends to running federal agencies like the FDA and the EPA and the CDC. So they get their people in high positions. And then you have the revolving door, where people who work for Monsanto are then appointed by President Obama, Michael Taylor, to head up an important division within the FDA. And the chemical companies, the people who produce the fluoride, the companies which make these vaccines that we're over-vaccinating with, recklessly vaccinating with, and I believe there are good vaccines, but some of them are harmful. And we know some of them are harmful because the Supreme Court in 2011 said that vaccines are inherently dangerous. And the vaccine program has paid out $3 billion. So don't tell me that they're all safe and that they're all effective. We know that whenever there's a slight measles outbreak, that half or more of the kids who get measles have been fully vaccinated. So there are people with big money who donate to medical schools, dental schools, to legislatures, and perhaps to governor candidates. Now, I haven't gotten any money from them, and I'm not going to take any money from them. I'm trying to use the Bernie method to reach you through jamesrobertdeal.org/radio, through Twitter, through Facebook, to get you to pass the word that there's a candidate who is a green, progressive Democrat and who represents the interests of the people. And one of the ways we can fix this problem is to reform how we finance elections so that we get new blood, new insights, not just professional politicians. Mr. Ingley is an expert at getting the Democrats all to work together, even though he's a corporatist Democrat, and most Democrats are New Deal Democrats. Mr. Inslee is the best, I guess, we can get, is what most Democrats are thinking. They'd rather vote for him than vote for Mr. Bryant, who has to appeal to the Tea Party people who've taken over what used to be a fine party. Dwight Eisenhower ran as a Republican, but he certainly couldn't get nominated today. One of the things that Eisenhower stood for, he made it plain. He said it, I think he said it in his convention. He said, we are supportive of the New Deal reforms. That meant 40-hour work week, minimum wage, protecting workers, Social Security. Tea Partiers are against all those things. They would rather not have a minimum wage. They think Social Security should be converted into an IRA. This is James Robert Deal. I'm going to call an end to this, but I'm going to ask you to go to jamesrobertdeal.org/radio, and there you'll find some links. You can forward these to all your friends, and it will lead them to the TVW 5-minute broadcast. It will also provide a link to Nation Builder where you can contribute. I need money to do what I'm doing, and I'm asking that you donate $1 or more. The maximum allowed is $2,000. And you can sign up for emails, and you can find a link to my Facebook page, so you can join that group and read those discussions. And you can sign up for my tweets. And one good thing about this campaign is it's helped me learn Facebook and Twitter better. I should also invite you to go to jamesrobertdeal.org/platform and read all my platform positions. Since I have another 11 minutes before my time runs out, I'm going to depart slightly from the subject of campaign finance reform and talk about another issue that's important to me, and that is eliminating traffic congestion. Traffic is tied up simply because there are too many cars on the road. There's only so many cars you can get on the road. When they get too close together, people can't change lanes. There are accidents. People can't enter and exit, and so it all bogs down. Now, if we were all friends and all trusted each other, if we were all coming from the same neighborhood, if we were all going to the same destination, then we could ride together. And a car that's driven solo carries 4 people instead. That would mean that 3/4 of the cars could be taken off the road. Then you'd have more room for the buses. The buses could whiz along at 60 miles an hour, and the vans could whiz along at 70 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, take you where you need to go. But we're not all coming from the same place or going to the same place, and we don't all trust each other. So what do? What we do is something we couldn't have done until Uber came along and proved that it was possible, and that is that provide door-to-door service available through an app on your cell phone. I'm not talking about doing this with cars driven solo. I'm talking about vans that carry anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 people that pick you up in your neighborhood and take you to the park and ride, where you get on a fast bus to Bellevue, and in Bellevue you get off and you take a van with 4 or 6 or 8 or 10 other people to the front door of the place where you work or where you're going. Or it also would take you to local destinations such as the doctor's office or the restaurant or to the mall. And when you're ready to go home, you request a ride and you ride back with 4, 5, 10 other people. And the advantage of this is that it would be cheaper than owning a car, because a car costs you $724 a month. And there are a lot of people who don't like to drive, especially at night. It's not secure to go stand on a street corner and wait for a bus. I see people at Alderwood Mall standing on a street corner in the rain, in the dark, waiting for a bus, and cars drive by really fast and splash water on them. That's not my idea of a modern transportation system. So go to jamesrobertdeal.org/door-to-door transit and learn more about this important subject. It would work financially, and here's why. I figured that it cost me under $10 to ride 3 miles from my home in Linwood to the Linwood Park and Ride. Now, if you take that $10 and if you had 5 passengers in the van instead of just 1, the real cost is $2 each way, $4 round trip. $4 times 20 days, 20 working days in a month. That's only $80. Then you would charge people to park at the park and ride to discourage them from doing so, number 1 purpose. Number 2 purpose is to make the park and ride available so that there would be parking spaces for people who choose to park there or who need to park there, or have a last minute need to go there. With the current system, the park and rides are maxed out at 7 o'clock in the morning, so you can't make use of this important service. So with vans picking us up and taking us to the park and ride, we fill up the vans, and the more people who use the vans, the more they fill up, the more cars they take off the road. Then you fill up the buses, and the buses develop more revenue, so there's more revenues left over to finance regional transit and completing Link Light Rail, and to pay for the vans that we'll need to buy. They're certainly a lot cheaper than the $500,000 buses that are driving around in Linwood, mostly empty most of the time. Now, I realize that in Seattle, they're not. They're full. I rode to my meeting at the Stranger by bus. I had to make 2 transfers. But in Seattle at night, most of the buses drive around mostly empty most of the time. Who does that benefit? It benefits the rubber and tire industry, the gasoline, the petroleum industry. Do most Democrats believe in that? No. If you keep voting for a traditional Democrat like Mr. Ingley, a traditional corporatist Democrat, then that's what you're going to get. You're not going to get the kind of reform that we need to make sense of our political system. This is James Robert Deal, and I want to close with one of my favorite songs, my interpretation of Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier.